Both semifinals in the Western Conference in the NBA playoffs are now tied at 1-1. Minnesota pulled even with Golden State Thursday night with a 24-point win in Game 2. Game 3 is Saturday in San Francisco. 2 Game 3s tonight. Cleveland at Indiana and Oklahoma City at Denver. From the You Gotta Be Kidding Me department, a University of Colorado football fan is suing the NFL for $100 million after former Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders dropped from a potential first-round pick to a fifth-round selection by the Cleveland Browns. Eric Jackson says Sanders' highly publicized fall in the NFL draft 2 weeks ago caused him, and I quote, severe emotional distress and trauma, end quote. Jackson is basing his lawsuit on his claims that the NFL violated Sherman antitrust laws for collusion and that Sanders' civil rights may have been violated. No comment yet from the NFL. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., and welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In this moment, in this time, in this space, on this our final show of the week, I want to reflect upon the idea of moral authority. There's political authority, there's military authority, and there's something called moral authority. Political authority might come from the majority of a people who have elected someone to represent them, and in that representative exists the political authority to do the will of the people, to advance the will of the people. In the question of military authority, the person who has the biggest guns, the biggest weapons, the biggest missiles, the military might, has the power to impose their will on people who have no military authority, no military power. The United States, for the last 40 or so days, has bombed the hell out of the Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis have conceded. We can't take it anymore. They don't have a navy. They have little pirate ships. They don't have nuclear weapons. They don't have aircraft carriers. They don't have F-22s, F-35s, F-15s, F-16s. They don't spend $850 billion a year developing their military. And so with satellite technology, America, Europe, first world nations have the power to look at a little hut, a little community of terrorists, of poor people who want something to eat, who want their fair share of a world that is deeply divided and skewed towards military power, political power, wealth, education, technology in their direction, while their people overwhelmingly suffer and struggle. We call them terrorists, the worst people on earth. And we use our military power to tell these people that they must adjust to our will. And then there's this question of moral authority, this intervention of God's hand in human history to change the course of human events, to make a difference in the lives of people in the realm of spirit energy. Are we born into the world to be oppressed? Are we born into the world to be second-class citizens? Are we born into the world to be slaves? Are we born into the world to be disrespected, to be treated differently than our neighbors? Enter the hand of God through the birth of his son, Jesus of Nazareth. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This question of moral authority between the rich and the poor, between the middle class and the last class, first class, coach class, last class. And yet we're all on the same plane. We're all taking off together. We're all landing together. Some of us have more overhead space on the plane than others. Some of us have wider seats than others. But we all take off together. And if it's God's will, we all land together. Moral authority. That on the plane, each of us are human beings made up of the same bones and the same sinew and the same muscle to accomplish a goal, to get from one place to the next. When we come forward, we're going to talk about the significance of the intervention of moral authority in our nation. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, we're going to explore what brings us together.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You got to live in the reality because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle. And if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Do you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt or personal loans? With credit card debt at all-time highs, Debt Relief Advocates is urgently notifying consumers of debt relief now being made available, designed to aid consumers with out-of-control credit card debt. Those who qualify and enroll for this relief program will only have to pay back a fraction of what they owe. This is not bankruptcy or a debt consolidation loan. This is a relief program that credit card companies would rather you not know about, as it ends your debt nightmare and saves you lots of money. Consumers owing at least $10,000 in credit card debt or personal loans can now take advantage of this debt relief as the cost of living skyrockets. Debt Relief Advocates has established a relief hotline for you to call to learn what debt reduction you may qualify for. For this free information, call 800-433-8909. 800-433-8909. That's 800-433-8909. Or simply visit godra.com.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join the Children, Youth, and Family Collaborative, CYFC, for their 25th annual Foster Youth Awareness Walk on Saturday, May 17th at 8 a.m. at Susan Miller Dorsey High School, 3537 Farmdale Avenue in Los Angeles. This community-centered event brings together advocates, supporters, and youth to raise awareness and resources for foster care programs in the greater Los Angeles area. Please register at Eventbrite CYFC 25th Anniversary Walk. Congratulations to the Children, Youth, and Family Collaborative on their 25th annual Foster Youth Awareness Walk. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour was supposed to be one of our regular contributors, Johnny Mack. Johnny Mack was entrusted by the late Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King Jr., to carry forward a gem of Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. She trusted no one but two persons: Claiborne Carson at the Stanford University Martin Luther King Jr. Institute, and Johnny Mack, with carrying forward the written, scholastic, interpretive, and spiritual legacy of her husband. Johnny can't be with us today, or at least because he's 9 hours ahead of us, he's in Africa, or 12 hours ahead of us in Africa. He might have a technical problem, or he might have just fallen asleep. And that's fine. But today I was going to press Johnny Mack on the question of moral authority and the importance of moral authority in human history. It's against the backdrop of the election just yesterday of a new pope. A man who in a real sense has a constituency of 1.4 billion Catholics, but 1.4 billion Catholics did not elect him Pope. From roughly 135 cardinals, an enclave or conclave of political considerations. What does the world need? What is it that the church stands for? Is it the past? Is it tradition? Or what is next? Yesterday, the conclave answered the question, what is next? We need a pope in the United States of America. Let's cut past all of the other considerations. That speaks English, that fights for immigrants, that's from the south side of Chicago, born and raised in Dalton, Illinois, who understands the ministry of gentrification, disparate outcomes in social realities, who will be elected to the pontificate against the backdrop of authoritarianism and oligarchies and billionaires who control the processes of human existence, healthcare, housing, education, the least of these and the poor, who can articulate in multiple languages and answer the question that was raised by Charles Spurgeon, what would Jesus do? How would he do it? How would he carry it forth? Some public pronouncement or measurement against the backdrop of politics called moral authority. Agree with the Catholic tradition or not, it is a millennia, nearly 2 millennia of an organization born in the context of St. Peter, who was asked by Jesus, upon this rock I shall build my church. What is the rock? The rock is truth. Measure what Jesse Jackson Jr. is saying against the truth. Measure what Donald Trump is saying against the truth. Measure what Congress is doing against the truth. Measure what the courts and the judicial system is doing against the truth, moral authority. In human history, from the earliest of known laws in 2350 BC, Euclidean's Code, established in Mesopotamia, to the Ten Commandments, according to the Jewish and Christian faiths received from God in 1300 years BC, before Christ, to the prophecy in 742 BC of Christ's birth, Isaiah said that a child would be born of a virgin who would come into the world, and upon his shoulders would rest the government. The expectations of the scriptures is not that a pastor is coming, that a seminary professor is coming, that a moralist is coming, but that someone is coming upon whose shoulders would rest the government. Someone who would govern us in a life, liberty, and happiness system. And 742 years from the prophecy of Isaiah, in year 0, born of a virgin in Bethlehem, is Jesus of Nazareth. From year 0 to roughly year 30, there is no real account of his life, his birth, the edict against his life, his escape into Egypt, and then ultimately, the beginning of his ministry after the baptism of John the Baptist. Most people baptized in the River Jordan were baptized in fairly shallow water. Assuming Jesus stood in the exact same place that other people were baptized, and given the impact of his life and his ministry on history, what was shallow water for most people became very deep water for human history. The question that plagues our conscience, the question of moral authority. From year 33, at the hour of his crucifixion, born into the world are significant time-changing and time-altering concepts. The concept of mercy. Before mercy, there was none. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, leaving everyone blind and toothless. With mercy, you get to keep your teeth. You get to wear glasses. You can still see, you can still hear, you can still talk. But another and a new understanding is reached. A person is really born again with mercy, with forgiveness. I could hate you the rest of my life. I could hate you as a person. I could hate your country. I could hate your nationality. I could hate your race. But the moment that I forgive you and forgive myself for hating you, everything changes. I'm born again. From Saul of Tarsus to the Apostle Paul. You're born again. I did not kill you. I chose to let you live. And together, from the old person that you were to the new person that I am, what was once one and what was now two is now two new people born into the idea that we can work together and make a difference. A concept introduced in human history in a profound way by the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth. Love. Before love, there was hate. Hate. And here comes Jesus telling us to love our neighbors as ourselves, challenging our consciousness to think about each other differently. And I'm not one to argue that the last 2,025 years of the Christian experience, which includes the doctrine of discovery, largely advanced by the Catholic Church and many other religious traditions, where predominantly European Christians have believed they've had the right to go into the world, to South America, to Africa, to poor people around the world, Christianize them, take their resources, discover them, even though they were here long before not only the Christian traditions, but before Jesus himself. They were here. And yet, the questions raised by Jesus, his color notwithstanding, are we going to live together? Are we going to grow together? Can we eat around a table of brother and sisterhood together? Is it possible? Whatever your tradition is, Catholicism, Protestantism, when Martin Luther taxed his thesis, 95 Theses on the church at Wittenberg in Germany, challenging the traditions of the Catholic Church and arguing that this protest should lead to ultimately a personal relationship with God, not through the Pope, not through the bishops, but a protest to be able to take communion and to drink, if you will, the blood of Jesus, and to celebrate the life of this ministry. And it is this protest movement that led to Protestantism, and it led to different denominations and congregations around the world who, in their own form of worship and protest, non-violently exercise the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth to bring about change. Moral authority. Yesterday, the Catholic Church and its conclave brought forward a new pope, the 267th pope of this tradition, with the vast majority of popes having never been part of, by definition, the modern era, where people are still yearning to breathe free, still yearning for racial justice, still yearning for economic justice, still yearning that just because you become a billionaire, that my citizenship rights aren't any less than your citizenship rights under a constitution, a real divine concept that requires someone to place their hand on the testaments that created this tradition and swear to uphold the idea that all of us are created equal. Moral authority. In my research says that the founding fathers of our country, just 250 or so years old, had an idea that against the backdrop of human history, not only are all men, and yes, ultimately women, are created equal, but that we have the power to govern ourselves accordingly. That we don't need authoritarianisms or people who have done better than us in our man-made economic system, but that we can govern ourselves through an election process, by voting, by engaging, by meeting with our fellow citizens and reaching a consensus on who would represent us in various offices throughout the land. And that person would carry our moral point of view to the legislative bodies and to the Senate of the United States and to state senates around our country and to the Congress of the United States and to houses of representatives in states around our country and ultimately to the presidency of the United States, where we the people govern. A new experiment in human history against the backdrop of 3,150 years of the development of law to year zero, and another 2,025 years, 5,000 years of human civilization based on law. Jesus of Nazareth represents an intervention in the idea that we as Americans and we as the American people have the power to start again. That's what I saw yesterday emerge from the chimney on the Sistine Chapel. An American who, when he comes to the United States of America, will draw crowds larger than Donald Trump can ever imagine. I predict 1 million people in Chicago alone, 1 million people in Washington, D.C., 1 million people in New York, 1 million people in Atlanta, Georgia, coming to see the first American Pope. Moral authority. What is it about the power of moral authority that trumps political authority? When we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, I will continue to explore these ideas when we come forward.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Black pastors in Grand Rapids, Michigan are disappointed but not surprised at the jury's deadlock in Christopher Scher's trial for the murder of Black man Patrick Luoya. Pastor Jerry Bishop of Life Quest Urban Outreach says the justice system needs changes.
The question is where do we go from here? There would have been no victory regardless of the outcome. Our city is fractured.
Bishop called for justice system reforms, including police training and mental health investments. President Trump is considering raising income taxes on wealthy Americans to fund the 2017 tax breaks set to expire next year. Congress is debating a budget package to extend those tax breaks. And Netflix is rolling out a redesign for its homepage on TV screens, the first big makeover since 2013. Starting next week, the page will feature fewer titles and more videos. Company officials say the goal is a sleeker design. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
40 acres in the mule, this is bigger than the music. Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Baby! Yeah, y'all, come on! Pick up the drum!
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah!
Gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey! I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Moral authority versus political authority versus military authority. I've been sitting here opining on it for the last half an hour, but my great friend, Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr., who has been preaching in the ministry for more than 45 years and is serving now in Fort Wayne, Indiana as the senior pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church, said today, in this moment during the break, that I want to come in and enjoy and join this conversation on moral authority. Pastor Dix, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Pastor?
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
I sure can, Pastor. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
Great. Please, please lean a little closer to your microphone, Pastor.
Okay.
We're talking about moral authority and the importance of it in the world today against the backdrop of history. Any contribution that you have would be greatly appreciated.
Yes. First of all, thanks for having me on. I think the real issue here is moral authority is only authority when it's recognized. And as with any authority. I remember one of the quotes Jesus said in the scripture where he said, it's quoted often, all power in heaven and earth is given unto me. And the real question becomes there is Jesus was talking about authority. He wasn't just talking about physical power. He wasn't just talking about political power. He was talking about authority where the text uses a word that means power or authority in the right hands. And I think that's what we have to recognize here is that moral authority becomes really more than just words when it is recognized as authority. And one of the problems in our society today is that we have allowed the idea of morality to take a back seat to political ideologies, and in some cases, even theological conundrums that we get into. And so this ideal of moral authority really vests in the fact is what do we consider moral as a people? And that is, it could be rooted, as you said earlier, in the foundations of faith, but it's not only rooted there. It's rooted in other places in our society. And you mentioned the Constitution of the United States. But again, to recognize the legal dynamics of the Constitution and not the moral dynamics is to miss the boat, in my opinion.
Let me just add to your thinking and maybe even challenge some of it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges, obviously, with moral authority is judgment. What is moral? You raised that question. What's moral to me may not be moral to you. And I'm not prepared under a constitution to be in judgment of someone else's standards of morality. That means if there are 350 million Americans, there are 350 million standards of morality. Right. So I'm not opposed to the idea of the human liberty system and you determining what constitutes morality to you, as long as it doesn't infringe upon my sense of morality or my sense of what is right, and we agree on a common law that respects and protects us as persons. Love our neighbors as ourselves, and hear this out, Pastor, mind your own business.
Absolutely.
Mind your own business. Now, don't judge me. Mind your own business, and I respect your point of view. But on the other hand, I just want to add on the other hand, so that's the judgment question of morality. But on the other side of this moral question, or what constitutes moral authority, is the ability of the servant, him or herself, to suffer with people. For example, I read Eddie Glaude's book on James Baldwin, and James Baldwin had spent time in Alabama with Martin Luther King Jr., and James Baldwin, according to Eddie Glaude, was asking the question, what made Dr. King so different? And it was this. Baldwin said he could preach he could preach better than most. One of the greatest preachers that's ever lived. He could think better than some of the great philosophers of human history. There's no doubt about that, Eddie Glaude said, and James Baldwin said about Dr. King. But what made Dr. King so different was that he was willing not to speak down to the congregants, and he said he never had a church more than 300 people, but that he identified with their suffering and he suffered with them. And what I heard from the Pope yesterday, the new Pope, was that he is prepared to suffer with the least of these, identify with them, and in experiencing their suffering, raise them beyond their suffering to the hope and the opportunity that they can go somewhere else. That's a different kind of use of moral authority, where we don't stand in judgment of someone, but we identify with the least of these, experience their suffering, and make their suffering our own suffering, and therefore we move forward. Reverend?
I think you're right on that. That does give him great moral authority when you take it from that perspective. The suffering with the suffering servant. What you gave Jesus moral authority, Isaiah 53 describes what he would be doing, that he would be with the people. I think what kind of shapes Pope Leo XIV too is, and maybe you mentioned this already, is his Augustinian background as a formation of his theological perspective. So the Augustinian background really roots itself in the ideal of community and caring for the poor. And so that was a really, really important dynamic in the selection of this Pope. I suspected, since we've talked last, that someone that would be like Pope Francis in terms of the social justice piece, but also someone who may not carry the church too far, too fast when it comes to the church's foundational principles, i.e., women in the priesthood, things like that. So I kind of feel like Pope Leo XIV gives the Catholic Church maybe a bridge pope in order to address some of the internal issues, as well as maintaining the social action of Pope Francis. And I think his Augustinian background and living in Peru says a lot to shape that formation.
I appreciate that perspective. I think that this bridge pope from the south side of Chicago, the south suburbs, who also worked in Peru, who is of Creole background and heritage, who understands diversity, equity, and inclusion, and obviously the American experiment and what it has accomplished, unlike any other country in human history, recognize that America, in a real sense, I believe, is the church. It is the what next against the backdrop of American history. When we come forward, a couple more questions for Pastor Dix, and then hopefully Pastor Dix will conclude for us today on a word of hope. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. when we come forward.
The station you turn to when you had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm. If you own a timeshare, don't miss this public service announcement from Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group.
If you receive an unsolicited phone call or mail piece to discuss selling, renting, or especially canceling your timeshare, don't fall for it. If you really want out of your timeshare, hang the phone up immediately or throw that mail piece in the trash and contact your timeshare resort or Wesley Financial Group for assistance with your timeshare. As the only Inc. 500 timeshare cancellation company, our knowledge, experience, and results has made Wesley a trusted resource for over 40,000 families we've helped get out of their timeshare. Give us a call and I'll send you our timeshare exit information kit free with the straight facts about your timeshare and all of your options for cancellation.
Call for your free info kit, 800-511-2112. That's 800-511-2112. 800-511-2112.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting rules for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply or apply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Hey!
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in the remaining time that we have on air today is Pastor Raymond C. Dix Jr. For more than 44 years, he's been preaching the ministry of the Lord Jesus Christ and is now serving in Fort Wayne, Indiana as senior pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church. Pastor Dix, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Glad to be here as always.
So I want to juxtapose in this final segment that we have on the program the likely global tour of Pope Leo XIV when he comes to the United States as the first American pope in 2,000 years. And the Catholic Church claim that popes are descendants of the tradition and the spirit energy of Peter. When 1 million people show up in Chicago, in Grant Park, and 1 million people show up in New York, and 1 million people show up in Atlanta, and in other cities that might constitute a global response to what has been taking place in our democratic republic. Maybe they're just showing up for communion. Maybe they're just showing up to reflect upon the Gospels themselves. But they're also showing up to see the rock, the truth of our faith in a particular tradition and a particular context. That is moral authority, and it's very different than the political authority that we are waking up to every day. 147 executive orders that have not gone through the People's House, through the Senate, or through any other process. Your thoughts, Pastor Dix, before we ask you to take us out with a word of hope.
Great. I think, first of all, let me say this, that the selection of American Pope is as much spiritually beneficial to the Catholic Church as it is ideologically beneficial, and maybe even perhaps politically beneficial. And let me explain it this way: the Catholic Church is experiencing a downturn in participation throughout Europe and in America. The places of growth that they feel very solid with would be Africa and South America and Asia, and that was said as much as the the selection process went on going into the conclave. So here now you have a offset in many ways of what is happening in America's move towards authoritarianism, if you will. And here's a pope that comes from America that, as you stated, understands democracy very well. But he also understands this: when democracy is not working, he understands the least of these. He understands the people overlooked by the American experiment. And I always say that I don't put a lot of high hopes on America because it's still an experiment. And experiments sometimes go bad. Sometimes they reveal good things.
That's
but in
right.
In this case, I think the Pope gives some hope to being able to challenge the move towards an authoritarianism type governmental structure where so much power lays in the executive, and be able to say that let's not forget these people who are part of God's plan as well: the poor, the disenfranchised, people of color, immigrants, and things like that. Let's not forget them as well. So he's going to challenge that for sure. And I think it was strategic on the Catholic Church, Brother Jesse, that they select someone who would be able to, for lack of better words, go toe to toe with the likes of Donald Trump. But not just Trump, the conservative political ideology across the board. So I think it was strategic in selecting him because he wasn't really the front runner,
I've always seen politics as I'm a seminary graduate, so I've always seen politics as the way in which I can make my faith function in a society, to make it work. I mean, I tried not to violate the principles of my faith in my politics. I don't want to pick up a gun. I don't want the kind of revolutionary change that hurts people any more than revolutionary change has naturally hurt people. I'm not trying to kill anybody. I'm not trying to dismember anybody, but I'm certainly trying to effectuate change in what I believe. When I answer the question, what would Jesus have me do? I try to do it, right? So I sense, in a real sense, a spirit energy, a potential for a shift in a spirit energy, even though we may not be Catholics, that the country is now potentially in a position where it can focus on certain key tenets of the principles, the doctrines of Jesus of Nazareth in their purest form that matters to any civilized society. And so I'm hopeful, but I'm also recognizing that there are some profound shortcomings to the American experiment that we together must overcome. With that said, Pastor Dix, there's about 3 minutes.
Okay.
There's about 3 minutes left in our program. And I want to, Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address in about 3.5 minutes, and Martin Luther King Jr. delivered the I Have a Dream speech in 13 minutes. So I'm giving you the final 2 minutes and 45 seconds to fit something right there in the mix.
That's
Give us some hope, Pastor Dix.
Yeah. Notice how the Baptist preacher took longer than Lincoln. So that's, but I will say this. Today I was at the funeral service of a very good friend of mine, and he would always answer the question of how he's doing with these words: I'm doing better than I deserve. And that was the mantra of his life. And so the hopeful thing for us going forward in looking at what might be a reawakening of the principles of Christ and the morality of the Catholic Church, or the influence even of the Catholic Church in America and beyond, is for us all to remember that we live under the grace of God. We live under this authority of Christ in our lives. And when I think about it, Jesse, in other words, there are a lot of problems in this world, and I wish I could fix them all, but I can't. When I think about what my life is, I think and say, I'm doing better than I deserve. You know, if God was to judge me on what I deserved, it would be a different ball game. But because of who he is, he has graced me now to wake up every morning in this favor and share that favor with others. I'll finish with this. The scripture says, when Paul talks to the Corinthian church, may the God of all comfort be with you. May he comfort you. But here's the key to that: so that you may comfort others, and that you both may experience the same comfort that God has given to you. And I think that's our calling as believers. We are comforted by God, we comfort others, and then they experience the same comfort that God gives to us. So I hope that gives some hope to people today.
It certainly does. And let me be perfectly candid and clear in the last 20 seconds or so that we have in the program. America is a theological experiment. It is filled with hope, opportunity, and it does have troubles. It is troubling. It is a difficult experiment, but it is the only experiment in human history that allows us to reflect upon what we can do in our time and space to improve it. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm very grateful to Pastor Raymond C. Dix, who called in today to save me because my guest is in Africa and there might be a technical problem connecting them to the show. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward next Monday, we look forward to continuing our work here on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Remember, the sky's the limit.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.